welcome to this Let's Speak English live stream on Twitch. My name is Hannah and I am one of the teachers here at Let's Speak English in Santander, and I'm super happy to be back on the Twitch again, teaching some Inglés útil para el día a día. And today we have a super interesting topic to cover today. Today I want to look at the passive voice in English. And so a lot of people worry a little bit about the passive voice in English because they don't really understand how we use it. They just try to avoid using it. And of course, the passive voice in English, I would say it's a little more commonly used maybe than in Spanish. But how we form the passive voice is so easy, okay? We just need to take the verb to be in the tense that we need it, follow it with the participle of the verb, and that's it. And we can use the passive voice in every tense, right? In all tenses. So today, to practice the passive voice, we're going to do some translations together. So I'm going to say some sentences in Spanish that will use the passive voice, and I want you watching to say it in English. So we're going to get started. So what I said, remember, we take the verb be in the tense that we want. That could be present, present continuous, simple past, past continuous, present perfect continuous, future with will, future with going to, and so on and so on. So let's get started. The first sentence. Se está haciendo. Se está haciendo. How do we say that in English? It is being done. It is being done. So not it is doing, because we want our past participle of our main verb, and be is the one that has to be in the tense that we want. So being, that's our present continuous. It is being done, and that's our past participle of do. It is being done. Se está haciendo. Easy, right? We're going to keep going. Let's move on. Se hace 2 veces por semana. Se hace 2 veces por semana. How will we say that in English? In English, it is done twice a week. It is done twice a week. Or, of course, if we want to sound more natural, we will use a contraction. It's done. It's done twice a week. And notice here how I say twice a week. You can say twice per week. You can say 2 times per week, 2 times a week as well. But I usually say twice. I think it's just a lot more convenient and it's easier to use twice rather than say 2 times. But as you want, you'll be understood either way. And I just use the passive. You will be understood. Te van a entender. You will be understood. It's just another one of those moments where we like to use the passive, right? So let's keep going. Se hizo ayer. Se hizo ayer. How will we say that in English? Se hizo ayer. So we want to take verb to be in tense that we want. In this case, it's in the past. Therefore, it was, and then our verb hacer, to do, our participle, done, ayer, yesterday. It was done yesterday. It was done yesterday. Okay. Another one. In the future with going to. Se va a hacer. Se va a hacer. We have to use be. So be plus going to plus our verb. It is going to. Then we still have to use be to form our passive. It is going to be done. It is going to be done. Of course, as we all know, I love to highlight the importance of contractions and fast spoken English on this channel. So I would never say it is going to be done, but rather it's going to be done. Let's put that in the chat. It's going to be done. Because of course, if you want to sound like a real pro when you speak English, you have to master the contractions. And of course, to understand natives, you have to know and be aware of your contractions. Otherwise, you will never understand anyone. It's going to be done. It's going to be done. So that contraction with going to, gonna. And of course, it is contracts to it's. It's gonna be done. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it's gonna be done. Okay, let's move on to a new one. What about one with the future? The future with will. Se hará en un futuro próximo. Se hará en un futuro próximo. We still have to use our be, but we still also want to use our participle of the verb do. Therefore, it will be done en un futuro próximo. It's a pretty nice expression of time in English. In the near future. It will be done in the near future. And of course, like I said, contractions, contractions, contractions. It'll be done in the near future. It will contracts to it'll. It'll be done. And just listen to how fast it comes out. It'll be done. It'll be done in the near future. And that's how you do that one. Another one. Se ha hecho varias veces. Se ha hecho varias veces. So, this case, because there's no specific moment in the past, varias veces, it can be at any time in the past. So we want to use the present perfect. So present perfect is formed with have or has plus the participle. So we're going to use the participle of be, but we still want our participle of do, se ha hecho. So therefore, it has been done varias veces, several times. And listen to my pronunciation of several. It's almost like it just has two syllables, right? Several, several. It's not several, because that just sounds super Spanglish. You know, it just doesn't sound that good. So to sound more natural, copy my pronunciation. Several. It has been done several times. And of course, like I have said a million times already, and I will keep saying it, we want to contract. So I often contract it has to become it's. It's been done several times. Now, I've got another one. Maybe it's a little more tricky. We want to try with a conditional, okay? A second conditional translation in the passive voice. If you can figure this one out, we can say you're a pro. Se haría si hubiera tiempo. Se haría si hubiera tiempo. So let's break it down. The first part is our passive part, se haría. So in the conditional, we want to use would plus our infinitive. It would be, that's our starting of the passive voice, but then we still want to use our participle of hacer, do. So therefore, it would be done si hubiera tiempo. And this part is maybe where people might struggle because we want to use a certain structure here. The verb haber in English is almost always there plus be because we use there as a dummy subject in this case. Therefore, it would be done if there were time. Si hubiera tiempo, if there were time. And the reason it's if there were time and not if there was time is because in English grammar, when we use the second conditional, technically, the verb to be must always change to were. Doesn't matter the subject. Although, to be honest, most native speakers don't use this correctly, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. So, just learn it the right way. It would be done if there were time. And that's it. Let's keep going with some more. Okay, what about this one in the passive voice? Se puede hacer. Se puede hacer. How do we say that in English? Se puede hacer. We're going to use can in this case. It can be done because we still need be, but as we know, after can, you just put your base verb. So it can be, and then our participle for the passive, done. It can be done. And again, listen to how I say it, how I say can. I really, I reduce it a lot, you know? It can be done. So I don't really emphasize can when I'm speaking. I don't say it can be done. English speakers, we very rarely give importance and stress to every single word evenly, okay? And that's the difference between stress-timed and syllable-timed languages. So any word that isn't super important, like a modal or an auxiliary, we reduce it. It can be done. Notice how can just, it almost disappears to can. It can be done. It's an interesting detail that you should be aware of if you want to understand natives. What about, so, se puede hacer, it can be done. Se podría hacer. How can we say that one? It could be done. Let's put it in the chat. It could be done. Exactly. All right. Then, more passive voice practice. Tiene que hacerse. Tiene que hacerse. How can we say that one in English? So remember, tener que in English is to have to. So if this is in the present, it has to. Then we need our base form, be, then our participle, done. It has to be done. It has to be done. Easy peasy. Another one. Getting a couple more challenging ones, but I don't think it's too bad. Debe hacerse. Debe hacerse. In English, how do we say that? So here's a tip. Debe normally translates to must. And remember, after must, we never put to because it's a modal. We don't need any, we don't need the infinitive. We just put the base verb. So debe hacerse. It must, then we need our be in the infinitive, in the base form, be, and then our participle, hacer, done. It must be done. It must be done. Then, if debe hacerse is it must be done, how do you say debería hacerse? Debería hacerse. How could we say that in English? Debería hacerse. Well, if you know, debería in English is should. It should be done. And that's that one. It should be done. All right. Now, here's a more challenging one that some people might struggle with. But don't worry, I'm here to help. Puede que se haga. Puede que se haga. A lot of people, when they see puede que, they initially want to translate it into something like, it's possible that, or possibly, they always want to use the word possible. And I understand, maybe it can make sense, but puede que, for me, it should translate to may. So it may, and then following the same structure as before with the modals, it may be done. It may be done, okay? It may be done. So those are a bunch of different structures. Ooh, a lot of, very informal. Those are a bunch of different structures using the passive with the verb do, done, in our participle. But of course, we don't just use it with do, we use it with any verb and every verb. So we've got some more translations with more random sentences now. So let's get started and see how you do. Okay, the first one. No se robó. No se robó. So the verb robar, to steal. But this is an irregular verb. So this is highlighting the importance of knowing your irregular verbs, your irregular participles in English. Otherwise, you might struggle with the passive voice. So it wasn't stolen. It wasn't stolen because steal, stole, stolen. It's an irregular one. It wasn't stolen. Okay. And that's a common one. The verb to steal, or well, stolen, is really, really commonly used in the passive. And the same thing goes for rob. I was robbed. Me robaron. I would always say I was robbed. My house was burgled, or my things were stolen. We often use that kind of verb, those verbs in the passive. It's just an interesting one. Okay, here's another one, just a random verb in the passive. No se está comprando. No se está comprando. So we're going back to that present continuous. So our be here is going to be being. It's not being bought. It's not being bought. No se está comprando. Another one. No se vende a menudo. No se vende a menudo. It isn't sold often. A menudo, often. It isn't sold. No se vende. It isn't sold often. More. Okay. Esa asignatura no se enseña aquí. Esa asignatura no se enseña aquí. How do we say that in English? Asignatura. It's not signature. Que el otro día alguien me dijo, my favorite signature at school. I was like, what? Asignatura, subject. Okay. Esa asignatura no se enseña aquí. That subject isn't taught here. That subject isn't taught here. And I want to highlight that pronunciation of taught. So it seems more complicated than it is, right? So I've heard taut, tucked, tucht. Really, the pronunciation is it's way more simple. Taught. Like, just ignore all those extra letters. There's too many letters in this word. It's just taught. The same goes for bought. Okay? It's not bought, bought. I've heard it all. It's just bought. Okay? The same goes for the verb to catch in its participle form. How do we say catch in its participle form? Caught, right? Again, really simple pronunciation. It's not caught, caught. Just ignore those extra letters because English likes to do that, right? Taught, bought, caught. Easy peasy. That subject isn't taught here. Here's another one then, using that passive structure. Se hizo a mano. Se hizo a mano. Again, using the simple past. Se hizo a mano. It was made by hand. It was made by hand. Siempre se hace a mano. So now we're going to practice a few in this structure, made by hand, just in different tenses. So you can get that agility using the passive voice in different tenses, because that's what this is all about, getting you agility, getting that repetition through all the different tenses so that you're confident and you can use different structures without having to think so much. You just have to practice and repeat them. And that's the way it works. That's the way you learn. So, it was made by hand. Se hizo a mano. Siempre se hace a mano. It's always made by hand. In the present, siempre. Siempre se hace a mano. It's always, and it is always, or with that contraction, it's always made by hand. Now, the present perfect. Siempre se ha hecho a mano. So remember from earlier, I explained how we use the present perfect in the passive, have or has been plus another participle. Therefore, it has always been made by hand. Or if you want to contract that, it's always been made by hand. It's always been made by hand. Now, what about in the future? Siempre se hará a mano. Siempre se hará a mano. It will always be made by hand. Or with our contraction, because we know contractions, they are life. It'll always be made by hand. It'll always be made by hand. Debería hacerse a mano. Debería hacerse a mano. In English, debería, remember from earlier, it should be made by hand. It should be made by hand. Let's do a few more before we wrap up. Now with some other random verbs. Back to the mix of verbs, okay? ¿Cuándo se descubrió? ¿Cuándo se descubrió? In English. So this is a question, so be careful with your word order. When was it discovered? So of course, when it's a question, we want to make sure we swap our order with our be verb and our subject. When was it discovered? And then if you wanted to say the answer, se descubrió en no sé cuándo, It was discovered in whenever. Insert year here. No se sabe nada. No se sabe nada. Another one in the present. Nothing is known. Again, with our irregular verbs, our irregular participles, so important that you know them and that you master them so that you can use the passive with agility and with accuracy. Nothing's known. Here's another one in the future. No se mandará. No se mandará. It won't, because that's our contraction, will not. It won't be sent. It won't be sent. What about this one? Se perdió. Se perdió. Perder, to lose, but it's irregular. So, it was lost. It was lost. And finally, el inglés se aprende a base de mucho estudio. El inglés se aprende a base de mucho estudio. Well, in the present, this one is English is learned through, a base de through, a lot of study. English is learned through a lot of study. And that is our last little passive voice translation for today. And ending it on a very important note about a lot of study is how you learn English. Y os voy a dejar aquí en el chat un enlace para nuestra academia online. Porque practicamos este tema mucho en nuestras clases, porque es muy importante dominar los verbos en pasado, en el present perfect, los participios, y bueno, con precisión, con agilidad, como lo he dicho ya. Entonces, si quieres más información sobre nuestras clases online, pues echa un vistazo en el enlace ahí que tengo fijado en el chat, que tiene toda la información que necesitas sobre nuestra academia. Bueno, ahí está un poco de passive voice hoy conmigo. So remember, to form the passive voice, we just take the verb to be in the structure, in the tense that we need, plus the participle of the verb. Espero que este live stream haya sido útil y nos vemos en la próxima clase. Chao.